Liam felt a tremor start in his hands. You're covering the costs for one afternoon, Mom? Seriously? His voice was tight, trembling with suppressed anger. What about the $7,000 I've already spent this year funding every other damn thing? What about the Poconos cabin I just paid off the balance on last week? The one all of us are supposed to be going to right after your intimate little party for Megan. Brenda sighed, the long-suffering sound he knew so well, the one that always preceded a guilt trip. Liam, please don't start making this difficult. You know, you always offered to help with those trips. Nobody twisted your arm. You make good money. This is different. This is about your sister's well-being. It's just one day. Offered? Liam pushed back, the injustice burning through his usual reluctance to argue. Mom, it stopped being an offer years ago. It became an expectation. I've covered every single vacation since Megan flushed your savings down the toilet with her business. Hotels, cabins, gas, food, her food preferences, while she cries about being stressed. And now, the one family tradition that's supposed to include everyone, I'm suddenly cut out because Megan needs cheering up? What about me, Mom? Don't I ever get considered? Brenda's patience snapped. Her voice turned sharp, accusatory. Honestly, Liam, sometimes you can be so incredibly selfish, always making everything about you and your money. Can't you just put your sister first for once in your life? She's fragile right now. She needs our support. You're strong. You're independent. You have your job. You don't need this little backyard barbecue like she does. Just let her have this one day in peace without you making a fuss. Selfish. The word landed like a physical blow, knocking the air out of him. Years of simmering resentment, of feeling undervalued, of being the silent, reliable ATM while his sister's failures were endlessly excused. It all detonated in that single poisonous accusation. He let out a short, harsh bark of laughter, utterly devoid of humor, the sound echoing brittly in his small apartment. Selfish. After everything. The final thread of obligation, frayed thin by years of being taken for granted, snapped clean through. You know what, Mom? Liam said, his voice suddenly terrifyingly calm, yet the previous heat replaced by an arctic chill. You're absolutely right. Megan does need this special day, and it sounds like you and Dad have it all under control, paying for it yourselves and everything. He paused, letting the silence stretch, amplifying the shift in his tone. So you guys enjoy Megan's barbecue. Have a great time. Before Brenda could process the change, or launch into another defense of Megan, Liam decisively ended the call. He tossed the phone onto the couch cushion beside him, where it landed silently. He stared blankly at the opposite wall, the cheap paint peeling near the ceiling. His decision wasn't even a conscious thought. It was an instantaneous, inevitable reaction. They wanted to handle things themselves. They considered him selfish? Fine. Starting immediately, they could handle everything themselves. He reached for his battered laptop. The silence after Liam ended the call felt absolute, heavy like the humid Philadelphia air pressing in through his open window. His mother's final word, selfish, echoed in the stillness. A sharp and jagged accusation that severed the last frayed threads of familial obligation. For years he'd swallowed the resentment, dutifully played the role of the provider, the fixer, the reliable son and brother. Now that role felt like an ill-fitting, sweat-soaked uniform he could finally rip off. With a deliberate movement that belied the tremor in his hands, Liam reached for his battered laptop on the cluttered coffee table. He flipped it open, the hinges groaning in protest. He didn't need to search his emails for long. There it was. The confirmation for Whispering Pines Cabin, Lake Harmony, Pennsylvania. Check-in, July 5th. Check-out, July 12th. Reservation holder, Liam O'Connell. Status, paid in full. He briefly scanned the photos. The rustic log exterior, the promised dock jutting out into the cool blue water, the shaded porch perfect for escaping the city heat. An escape he had researched, booked, and paid for, anticipating the collective sigh of relief when they all arrived. He navigated to the rental company's online portal, logged in using the credentials saved from previous year's bookings, and located the active reservation. The details stared back at him. 7 nights, the total cost reflecting his hard-earned overtime. His cursor hovered over the button, stark and unambiguous. Cancel reservation. He paused just for a second. He thought of Brenda's tearful guilt trips, Patrick's passive expectations, Megan's casual entitlement. He thought of the $7,000 already gone that year, the postponed truck purchase, the fishing trips missed with Dom. He thought of the word selfish. With a decisive click, he pressed the button. A confirmation window popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel? Per cancellation policy, bookings canceled less than 14 days prior to arrival are subject to forfeiture of the 50% deposit. Liam clicked Confirm Cancellation. The screen refreshed. Reservation canceled. The lost deposit felt like a small, necessary price for reclaiming his own life. He closed the laptop with a quiet snap, a grim sense of finality settling over him, cold and clean, amidst the oppressive heat of his apartment. The next few days leading up to the 4th were brutal. The heatwave, forecast for weeks, descended on Philadelphia with suffocating intensity. News reports crackled with warnings. Record-breaking temperatures expected. Cooling centers open across the city. Urgent pleas to conserve energy to avoid straining the power grid. The asphalt outside Liam's apartment shimmered, radiating heat waves that distorted the air. Even the weeds in the cracked sidewalk seemed to wilt in protest. Liam endured it at the construction site, the work becoming exponentially more taxing under the blazing sun. Concrete cured too quickly, tempers frayed among the crew, and every movement felt like wading through hot soup. He came home each evening utterly drained, stripping off sweat-soaked clothes and collapsing under the inadequate breeze of his wheezing box fan. Through it all, his phone remained silent from his family, save for one brief, chirpy text from Brenda on July 3rd. Don't forget Megan loves those fancy potato chips for the BBQ. See you tomorrow. Liam had stared at the text, deleted it without replying, a fresh wave of cold anger washing over him. They'd truly expected him to just show up for Megan's party after being explicitly uninvited. The delusion was staggering. He caught a glimpse of Megan's Instagram story later that day via cousin Sean Riley's shared feed. Megan posing with star-spangled napkins and a newly purchased inflatable flamingo pool float captioning it, "Prepping for my super chill, intimate fam BBQ tomorrow, so needed this. Blessed in all your family time, original summer vibes." The casual entitlement, the utter lack of awareness was like salt rubbed into a fresh wound. It only solidified Liam's resolve. Let them have their number, family time. The 4th of July arrived, hot and heavy. Liam worked an optional half-day shift, pocketing the welcome holiday overtime pay. He spent the afternoon in a sweltering apartment, blinds drawn against the punishing sun. The distant pop-pop-pop of neighborhood fireworks began as dusk settled, mingling with the smell of charcoal grills from nearby backyards. He ignored the familiar pang of being excluded from the one tradition that had always felt like theirs. He cooked himself a single hot dog in a frying pan on his stove, the lonely sizzle a quiet counterpoint to the imagined sounds of laughter and celebration at his parents' place. He drank a couple of beers, watched a baseball game on his old TV, and went to bed early. His phone remained dark. No calls, no texts, complete silence from the O'Connell clan. July 5th dawned, if possible even hotter. This was the day they were supposed to drive up to the Poconos, escaping the city's smog for the cool mountain air in the lake. Liam could vividly picture the scene at his parents' house. Bags packed and waiting by the door since the night before, car probably half loaded, Brenda bustling around making last-minute sandwiches, Patrick impatiently checking his watch, Megan complaining about the heat already while scrolling through her phone. Brenda would be trying to call the cabin rental office for the exact check-in time or the key code, expecting Liam to have handled everything else. Around mid-morning, Liam's phone, which he deliberately left on silent but visible, buzzed on his kitchen table. A text from Brenda. "Liam? Just called Whispering Pines? They say no reservation under O'Connell for today. Must be system error. Call them back ASAP. We're packed ready to go. Need check-in details." Liam looked at the text, then calmly took a sip of his iced coffee. He didn't touch the phone. Around mid-morning, Liam's phone, which he deliberately left on silent but visible, buzzed on his kitchen table. A text from Brenda. "Liam? Just called Whispering Pines. They say no reservation under O'Connell for today. Must be system error. Call them back ASAP. We're packed ready to go. Need check-in details." Liam looked at the text, then calmly took a sip of his iced coffee. He didn't touch the phone. Minutes later, it buzzed again. A voicemail notification from Patrick. Liam let it go to Message Bank, but the notification preview showed the urgency. "Son, what the hell's going on with the cabin? Brenda's freaking out. Says it's canceled. Must be some computer mix-up. Get on it and sort it out, will ya? It's already boiling out here. We need to leave." Another text notification flashed, this one from Megan. "OMG, Liam. Where's the cabin booking? The website says canceled? WTF happened? Fix it now. I'm literally melting here. Liam watched the notifications pile up, a grim tableau of dawning panic. Their immediate assumption wasn't that he had done anything, but that there was an external error he was responsible for fixing. The ingrained expectation, the absolute certainty that Liam, the reliable fixer, would handle it. He felt a cold wave wash through him, extinguishing the last embers of lingering guilt or doubt. He stood up, walked out to the tiny concrete patch behind his apartment building that served as a yard, and picked up the hose. He began watering the single struggling tomato plant he'd optimistically planted in a bucket, letting the cool spray splash over his dusty work boots. The sun beat down relentlessly. The city hummed with the oppressive weight of the heat wave. Inside his apartment, his phone continued to buzz with unanswered calls and increasingly frantic texts. Liam didn't look back. They wanted him out of their celebration? Fine. They could navigate the heat wave without the escape hatch he always provided, too. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. He let the water run, washing the dust away. The days following the 4th bled into a week, then nearly 2, each seemingly hotter than the last as the heat wave clamped down hard in Philadelphia. The city felt like it was holding its breath under a thick, wet towel. Temperatures clawed their way past 95, flirting with the century mark, day after relentless day. News reports spoke of strained power grids and crowded public pools, while the very asphalt on the streets seemed to shimmer and soften in the punishing sun. The relentless Philadelphia summer sun beat down on the construction site, turning the air thick and hazy with dust and humidity. Liam O'Connell wiped a bead of sweat from his brow with a grime-covered forearm, the rough fabric of his work shirt already plastered to his back. As site foreman, the responsibility weighed heavier than the relentless heat, managing the crew, coordinating deliveries, ensuring safety protocols were met under a punishing deadline. It was hard, physical work, the kind that settled deep in your bones. But Liam took a quiet pride in it, in building something tangible, in earning his keep through sweat and skill. It was a stark contrast to the life his younger sister Megan seemed determined to pursue. Megan O'Connell lived in a world filtered through Instagram feeds and fleeting online trends. 3 years ago, armed with boundless confidence but zero business acumen, she'd convinced their parents, Brenda and Patrick, to drain a significant chunk of their modest retirement savings to fund her dream. An online boutique called Meg Style Finds, specializing in supposedly curated fast fashion knockoffs. It had imploded spectacularly within 6 months, leaving behind boxes of unsold polyester, a mountain of credit card debt, and parents whose nest egg was suddenly terrifyingly fragile. Liam remembered the aftermath vividly. Brenda's tearful phone calls, Patrick's quiet, worried silence. Megan characteristically had dissolved into dramatic pronouncements about the universe being against her, retreating to her childhood bedroom amidst the unsold inventory. Liam, fresh off a grueling overtime push on a bridge repair project, had stepped in, initially just trying to keep the lights on for his parents, covering their mortgage shortfall that first month. "Just until we get back on our feet, Liam," Brenda had said, her voice thick with manufactured helplessness. "Your father's hours have got cut back a bit, and with Megan's setback." Then came the suggestion, a few months later, once the immediate financial panic subsided but the cloud of disappointment lingered. "Liam, honey, maybe just a small break, a long weekend down the shore. Your father and I are so stressed, and poor Megan needs a change of scene." Liam, already covering several $100s a month in their household expenses, had hesitated, but the image of his parents' strained faces, Brenda's artful guilt-tripping, "We never get to see you relax, you work too hard," and a lingering sense of filial duty had worn him down. He'd booked a cheap motel in Wildwood, covered the gas, the boardwalk food, the whole thing. That first trip, intended as a one-off emergency measure, became the blueprint. The following year, it was a week-long rental. Then came requests for fall weekends in the Poconos. "The leaves are so beautiful, Liam, it would do your mother a world of good." Then a budget spring break trip to Florida. Megan saw a deal online, practically free if you cover the flights and hotel, Liam. Somehow, over 3 years, Liam O'Connell, the construction foreman busting his ass 60 hours a week, had become the sole financier of the O'Connell Family Vacation Fund. It wasn't discussed openly, it was simply expected. Brenda would casually mention booking deadlines, sighing about how nice it would be to get away. Patrick would nod passively, adding, "Liam's good with the computer stuff, he'll sort the booking." Megan would chime in about needing a new swimsuit or complain that last year's cabin didn't have good enough Wi-Fi for her content creation, which seemed to consist solely of posting selfies. The cost mounted steadily. Liam tracked it grimly, close to $6,000 last year alone, creeping towards $7,000 this year. It was the price of multiple cabins, beach house deposits, gas money handed over in cash, grocery runs before they left. Just basics, Liam, but get the good burgers Megan likes. Theme park tickets, even Megan's essential aloe vera, after she inevitably got sunburned despite the expensive sunscreen he'd also bought. Each expenditure chipped away not just at his bank account, but at his spirit. It meant his own plans, saving for a down payment on a small house of his own, upgrading his aging pickup truck, taking a fishing trip with his buddy Dom Rossi, were perpetually deferred. It meant picking up extra Saturday shifts, coming home too exhausted to do anything but shower and collapse, his muscles screaming while seeing Megan post filtered photos captioned number blessed or number vacay life from a trip she hadn't contributed a dime towards. He loved his family, truly he did. That sense of duty, ingrained deep from his South Philly upbringing, warred constantly with a rising tide of resentment. He saw the unfairness clearly. Megan, coddled and enabled, faced no consequences for her financial irresponsibility. His parents, perhaps meaning well, but blinded by favoritism towards their daughter, simply transferred the burden onto him, cloaking their expectations and pronouncements about family helping family. He felt trapped, his hard-earned money siphoned away to fund a lifestyle he himself couldn't afford, all while being implicitly treated as the dependable, uncomplaining workhorse. The unspoken message was clear. Megan had dreams, however flawed. Liam had obligations. The simmering pot of his resentment was dangerously close to boiling over. He just hadn't realized how close until that sticky June evening, sprawled on his lumpy couch after a particularly brutal shift, when his mother's name flashed on his phone screen, bringing news that would finally make it erupt. Liam was already mentally shifting gears towards the upcoming 4th of July holiday weekend. It was late June, the oppressive Philly humidity settling in, and the thought of the annual family barbecue followed by the week-long escape to the cooler air of the Poconos was a welcome prospect. He'd finalized the payment on the cabin rental just last week, a rustic but comfortable place near a lake he'd found online, big enough for his parents, Megan, and himself. It had cost a significant chunk of his last paycheck, adding to the nearly $7,000 he'd already shelled out that year alone for various family necessities and smaller getaways. But the 4th was tradition. Rain or shine, the O'Connells gathered at his parents' small row-house backyard for burgers, fireworks, and Brenda's questionable potato salad. It was the one constant in their increasingly strained dynamic. He was home after a particularly grueling shift, managing a concrete pour that had run late, finally kicked back on his lumpy couch with a cold beer, the cheap box fan in the corner doing little more than rearranging the thick, stagnant air. His phone rang, displaying Mom. He figured it was a reminder to pick up extra charcoal or help Patrick clean the grill. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" he answered, taking a long pull from his beer. "Liam, honey. Just wanted to touch base about the 4th. Brenda's voice came through, unusually bright, almost artificially cheerful. Liam relaxed slightly, leaning back against the worn cushions. "Yeah? Need me to grab anything on the way over? Ice? Extra buns?" "Oh no, sweetie, nothing like that," Brenda chirped breezily. "Actually, your father and I decided we're doing something a little different this year. You know how stressed Megan has been lately, poor thing, with everything." Liam mentally rolled his eyes. Megan's stresses usually stem from her latest self-inflicted drama or financial shortfall. "So," Brenda continued, "we thought she deserved a really special day, something just focused on cheering her up. We're hosting a nice little barbecue just for her, right here at the house." Liam waited for the rest, the part where she'd ask him to contribute or bring something specific. Instead, Brenda added, "And the best part is, Dad and I are handling everything ourselves this time. All the food, the drinks, decorations, the works. Just something simple and intimate." A beat of silence hung on the line. Liam frowned, lowering his beer. "Okay. So, what time should I head over?" There was another slight pause, then Brenda's voice, losing some of its forced brightness, took on a placating tone. "Well, honey, that's the thing. Like I said, it's really just going to be something small, focused entirely on Megan, to keep it low-key for her, you know? So, anyway, we won't be expecting you this year, okay? It's just for Megan, you understand. We'll all get together properly up at the cabin the week after, like always." The casualness of the dismissal slammed into Liam, stealing his breath. "Wait," he said slowly, sitting bolt upright, the worn springs of the couch groaning. "What did you just say? Not invited? To the 4th of July barbecue? At your house? The one day we always spend together?" Disbelief warred with a sickening lurch in his gut. This wasn't just forgetting him, this was deliberate exclusion. Brenda's voice immediately shifted, taking on a defensive, slightly martyred edge. "Well, yes, dear. That's what I explained. Megan needs this right now. She needs a calm day, no pressure, just family supporting her." The implication hung heavy. Liam's presence equaled pressure or negativity. "And since," she added, emphasizing the words as if bestowing a great sacrifice, "your father and I are covering all the costs for this one barbecue ourselves, we just decided keeping it smaller, focused on her needs, was best." For Liam, work at the construction site became a test of raw endurance. The sun beat down, reflecting off steel beams, baking the half-poured concrete. Sweat drenched his clothes within minutes of starting a shift, and the air was thick with the taste of dust and exhaustion. Yet he found a grim focus in the physical labor, a clarity that came from pushing his body to its limits. It was a world away from the simmering domestic drama he was deliberately ignoring, a drama playing out across the increasingly frantic notifications lighting up his phone screen. In the beginning, after they discovered the cabin cancellation, the messages from his family had been laced with confused annoyance, assuming a simple booking error he needed to rectify. But as Liam remained stubbornly silent, ignoring call after call, text after text, their tone began to shift. Confusion curdled into anger, then rapidly descended into outright panic as the reality of being trapped in the sweltering city, without the lakeside escape they'd taken for granted, truly sank in. His phone became a constant barrage, a digital testament to their unraveling. Brenda's texts arrived in rapid succession, a dizzying blend of commands and guilt trips. "Liam, answer me," one screamed in all caps. "The rental company confirmed you canceled." "Why? Fix this now!" This was followed minutes later by, "It's 95 degrees in this house, Liam. The window AC unit can barely keep up. Megan feels faint. She says she can't breathe. How could you be so cruel to your own sister?" Later the tone would soften momentarily, seeking a different angle. "Please, honey, just call me back. Maybe we misunderstood about the BBQ. We miss you. We need the cabin. Please." Only to pivot back to demands when silence was her only answer. "Is this about money? We know you have it. Just book something else for us. Anything." Patrick's voicemails followed a similar trajectory. The initial gruff demand. "Son, what's this about the cabin? Sort it out, will ya?" Soon escalated into frustrated anger. "Damn it, son, answer your phone. Brenda's a wreck. You're letting your family down." Eventually, a rough edge of worry crept in. "Liam, seriously, the old AC here is barely working. Brenda's really not handling this heat well. Just call, all right? And Megan?" Megan's texts were exactly what Liam expected. A firestorm of pure, unfiltered entitlement and blame. "You are literally the worst brother ever. You canceled the cabin on purpose, didn't you? My summer is ruined because of you." Followed by dramatic declarations. "I'm literally going to die in this heat. My skin is freaking out. This is torture. You owe us a vacation." And finally, petulant demands. "Seriously, Liam, just use your stupid credit card and book anywhere with AC and a pool. It's your fault this happened, so you have to fix it. Do something!" Liam would read these messages during brief water breaks on the scorching job site, or scan them quickly when he got home, the words blurring together in a litany of self-absorption. He felt the familiar knot in his stomach, the sting of being the perpetual fallback, the anger at their utter refusal to acknowledge why he might have finally snapped, and overlaying it all, a growing sense of cold, hard justification. Not once did any message mention the barbecue exclusion, or the selfish accusation. Not once did they offer an apology or express understanding. It was all about the cabin, the heat, their discomfort, and his assumed obligation to fix it. He met Dom Rossi for beers after work one evening, seeking refuge in the blessed chill of their usual corner bar. Liam slid his phone across the sticky table wordlessly. Dom scrolled through the recent messages, his eyebrows climbing higher with each screen swipe. He finally pushed the phone back, whistling softly. "Whoa. They went from 0 to a meltdown fast, huh? And they still don't get it? Still think you're the bad guy here?" Liam nodded. taking a long pull from his beer. The cold liquid felt good against his parched throat. They think I owe them. Always have. Me not being at the 4th was just inconvenient because it meant I was upset, not because they actually did anything wrong. Dom clapped him firmly on the shoulder. Nah, man, you don't owe 'em squat after how they treated you, calling you selfish. Seriously. Good for you for finally holding the line, Liam. Let 'em sweat. Hearing the validation from outside the toxic family bubble felt like loosening a tight band around his chest. Later that week, a call came from cousin Sean Riley, his voice practically vibrating with suppressed laughter. Dude, you're officially a legend/public enemy #1 over at Aunt Brenda's, Sean reported. Word is their main window AC unit completely died yesterday. Brenda called Mom crying for like an hour. Apparently Patrick tried to fix it himself with duct tape and maybe a butter knife. Almost electrocuted himself. Liam couldn't suppress a dark chuckle. And Megan? Pure gold. Posted this whole dramatic saga on Instagram. 20 stories, easy, about being trapped in a hostile heat environment by toxic family members, sabotaging her desperately needed mental health spa retreat. You gotta see the comments, man. Nobody's buying it. Anyone offer them a place to stay? Liam asked, already knowing the answer. Are you kidding? Sean snorted. Nobody wants that 3-ring circus, especially not sweating buckets in their living room. They're completely on their own. Seriously, 'cause legendary. The heatwave continued, relentless. Liam kept working, kept coming home to his small, hot apartment, kept ignoring the increasingly desperate digital onslaught. Brenda tried calling from a neighbor's phone. He recognized the number on caller ID and ignored it. Patrick left a long, rambling voicemail that started angry, veered into pleading descriptions of the heat and Brenda's headaches, and ended with confused questions about what he'd done wrong. Megan's texts became streams of incoherent emojis and accusations. Liam remained a wall of silence. He realized with absolute certainty that their panic wasn't about mending fences or understanding his hurt. It was purely about their own physical discomfort and their fury that the automatic comfort provider, the system funded by the son they'd insulted, had suddenly inexplicably shut down. Their pleas weren't about family, they were about restoring their convenience. And Liam O'Connell, finally blessedly, was done being convenient. The heatwave reached its malevolent peak mid-July, clamping down on Philadelphia with brutal, suffocating force. The official temperature hit a staggering 102 degrees, but with the humidity, it felt closer to 110. News channels broadcast nonstop warnings about heat stroke, urged residents to check on elderly neighbors, and reported scattered power brownouts across the city. Even inside Liam's apartment, the cheap window AC unit strained constantly, managing only to keep the air barely tolerable, a stark contrast to the inferno outside. He could only imagine the conditions inside his parents' older row house, now stripped of its primary cooling source. Late one sweltering afternoon, after a particularly draining shift where the work had been cut short due to safety concerns about the extreme heat, Liam heard it. A frantic, heavy pounding on his apartment door that vibrated through the thin walls. He glanced through the peephole. Patrick. His father stood on the landing, drenched in sweat, his face flushed an alarming shade of red beneath his thinning hair. His work shirt was plastered to his chest, and his eyes held a wild, desperate glint. Liam opened the door just a crack, leaning his shoulder against the frame, deliberately allowing only a sliver of the relatively cooler air from his apartment to spill onto the stifling hallway landing where Patrick stood panting heavily. "What do you want, Dad?" Liam asked, his voice quiet and neutral. Patrick didn't bother with greetings. He practically exploded. "Jake! Liam, for God's sake, what the hell's wrong with you? We've been calling, texting. The cabin's gone. Megan's barbecue was weeks ago. Ancient history. We're dying over here. Your mother's sick, lying down with cold cloths. You did this, didn't you? You canceled that damn trip just to punish us." His voice cracked, a mixture of fury and heat-induced desperation. Liam didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice. He simply crossed his arms, his expression unreadable, letting his father's accusations hang in the oppressive air. "Punish?" he repeated calmly when Patrick paused for breath. "Number just adjusted my spending to reflect my status in the family. You paid for Megan's special barbecue, remember? Decided I wasn't needed for the 4th, after I'd already dropped nearly $7,000 this year on funding everyone else's good time. Mom made it crystal clear where I stood when she called me selfish." He held his father's gaze. "I figured if I'm not needed for the family events you want to pay for, then maybe you don't need my help with the expensive ones either. You had it covered, remember?" It was one day, Patrick shouted again, frustration warring with exhaustion. Sweat dripped freely down his temples. Just one damn party. Your sister was struggling, needed a boost. Your mother, she worries. We can't afford another place now. We're broke because things have been tight. He couldn't bring himself to blame Megan directly even now. It's over 100 degrees in that house, Liam. The old AC unit finally died. You gotta do something. You gotta fix this. No, Dad, Liam said, his voice still quiet but now infused with a firmness Patrick had likely never heard from him before. I don't gotta fix anything. You do. You chose to prioritize Megan's barbecue over our only real family tradition. You stood by silently while Mom insulted me after years of me carrying the financial load. This heat? This discomfort? Your dead AC? This is the direct, predictable result of your choices, your priorities. Liam started to push the door closed slowly. Not my problem anymore. Liam, wait! Patrick sputtered, reaching out as if to physically stop the door. Enjoy the summer, Dad, Liam said, his voice flat, and shut the door firmly, engaging the deadbolt with a decisive click. He leaned his forehead against the cool wood for a moment, his heart pounding, listening to his father's muffled shouts of disbelief and rage fade as he eventually retreated down the hallway. The confrontation left Liam trembling slightly, but his resolve was absolute. 2 evenings later there was another knock, softer this time, almost hesitant. Liam checked the peephole again. Brenda. She looked even worse than Patrick had. Her usually neat hair was limp and stuck to her damp forehead, her face pale and heat-flushed, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. She clearly opted for the tearful, pity-seeking approach. He opened the door just as wide as he had for Patrick, remaining framed in the doorway. Liam, please, Brenda began immediately, her voice trembling, tears already welling. Oh, honey, we can't take much more of this heat. It's just unbearable. Megan is truly miserable, really sick from it all, barely eating. And your father, he's beside himself, trying to fix that ancient AC, getting nowhere. She reached out, her hand fluttering towards his arm. We messed up, Liam. We know that now. We didn't mean for the barbecue to hurt your feelings. Truly, we didn't. It was just... You know how we worry about Megan. She's so sensitive. Liam stepped back slightly, avoiding her touch, his arms remaining crossed. He saw the familiar script playing out. The minimizations of his feelings, the immediate pivot to Megan's supposed fragility, the appeal to guilt and obligation. The performance was almost impressive in its predictability, but utterly ineffective now. You didn't mean to hurt me, Mom, he repeated, his voice dangerously level. You deliberately excluded me from the only family gathering we have all year, and when I pointed out the unfairness, after years of me paying for everything precisely because you worry about Megan so much, that you enabled her to drain your savings, your response was to call me selfish. But we're family, Brenda sobbed, tears now flowing freely. Family's supposed to help each other. We need you, Liam. We made a mistake. Family is also supposed to respect each other, Liam countered, his voice gaining a hard, unwavering edge. Family doesn't treat one member like an ATM machine, insult them when they finally question it, cut them out when it's convenient, and then come crying for a bailout when things get uncomfortable. I helped, for years, without complaint. My reward was being called selfish and getting uninvited from the 4th of July. He shook his head slowly, decisively. I'm done, Mom. Done being the bankroll. Done being the fixer. Done enabling Megan's inability to handle her own life. You guys wanted to handle the 4th yourselves? You figure out how to handle this heat wave yourselves, too. He started to close the door again. Liam, no, wait! Brenda cried out, reaching for the door frame. It's not my problem anymore, Liam said, his voice final, and closed the door firmly but gently in her tear-streaked face, engaging the lock once more. He leaned against the inside of the door, listening to her muffled sobbing and an eventual shuffling retreat down the hallway. The expected wave of guilt didn't come. Instead, beneath the lingering sadness at the undeniable brokenness of it all, there was a profound, almost shocking sense of relief. The weight wasn't just lifted. It felt like a tumor had been excised. He had faced them both down. He had held his ground. The boundary finally was real. Whatever scorched earth lay on the other side of that door, it was no longer his responsibility to irrigate. The brutal heat wave finally broke in late July, surrendering Philadelphia to the relative mercy of typical summer temperatures. Thunderstorms rolled through, washing the dust from the air, and a collective sigh of relief seemed to rise from the city. The immediate suffocating crisis that had amplified the O'Connell family's desperation passed, but the wreckage left by their choices, and Liam's reaction, remained. Weeks bled into August, then cooled into the approach of September. Liam heard sporadic updates, mostly through cousin Sean Riley, who seemed to relish relaying the ongoing O'Connell saga with dark amusement. The silence from his parents and sister was absolute. The frantic calls and texts had ceased entirely after the doorstep confrontations. It wasn't a truce born of understanding, Liam knew, but more likely a sullen retreat fueled by resentment and the dawning, unwelcome realization that his financial support was truly gone. According to Sean, Brenda had made the rounds among relatives, attempting to borrow money, citing unexpected expenses and Patrick's reduced hours. Though her pleas were largely met with polite refusals, the extended family was well aware of the dynamic and Liam's long-standing role. Patrick had been seen quietly selling some of his older prized tools at a weekend flea market, a quiet indicator of their financial strain. Megan, after a dramatic online announcement about needing to escape toxic environments, had apparently landed semi-permanently on a college friend's couch across town, her social media feed shifting from entitled complaints to vague pronouncements about new beginnings that conveniently ignored her role in the family's predicament. Their household, Sean reported, was tense and fractured, the blame likely shifting amongst themselves now that Liam was no longer the primary target or solution. In stark contrast, Liam felt a profound, almost disorienting sense of lightness. The constant, low-level hum of anxiety about the next expected contribution, the next guilt-laden request, was gone. He slept better. He found himself with disposable income for the first time in years, actual money he could choose how to spend, or better yet, save. He opened a dedicated savings account, transferring a satisfying amount into it each payday, watching the balance grow with a sense of accomplishment that felt entirely new. He spent a Saturday finally tackling the much-needed repairs on his aging pickup truck, not out of necessity, but because he wanted to. Dom Rossi came over, tools spread across the driveway, music playing from a portable speaker, grease staining their hands as they laughed and worked. A simple camaraderie Liam realized he'd sorely missed, often having worked extra shifts on weekends instead. He booked the fishing trip Dom had been suggesting for years, a long weekend in the fall, a small rented cabin on a quiet lake, just for them. No family obligation is attached. He even repainted his cramped apartment bedroom, covering the dingy beige walls with a clean, bright white. The simple act of reclaiming and improving his own small space felt symbolic, a physical manifestation of the internal boundaries he had finally enforced. There were moments, of course, usually late at night or during a quiet moment at work, where a pang of sadness would surface. He thought about the 4th of July barbecues of his childhood, the easy laughter before Megan's problems began, the feeling of belonging, however complicated. He hadn't set out to break his family. He had simply refused to continue enabling their dysfunction at his own expense. He didn't relish their current struggles, but the sharp sting of Brenda's selfish accusation, delivered after years of his sacrifice, remained a potent reminder of why this separation was necessary. He couldn't fix them, especially when they refused to see the real problems. He could only save himself. He knew the relationships were fundamentally altered, perhaps permanently. Reconciliation might happen someday, but it would require a seismic shift in their perspective, genuine acknowledgement of their actions, accountability from Megan, an end to the entitlement, changes Liam realistically doubted it would ever occur. His peace came not from their validation, but from his own acceptance of this reality. One crisp evening in early October, Liam sat on the small concrete steps behind his apartment building, nursing a cold beer. The oppressive heat of summer was a fading memory, replaced by the cool, sharp air of autumn. The city sounds were muted here. Distant traffic, the chime of an ice cream truck blocks away. He watched the sunset paint the Philly sky in hues of orange and purple. His phone remained quiet. No frantic calls, no guilt-laden texts, just peace. His phone buzzed then, startling him slightly. He glanced at the screen. A text from Dom. "Fishing trip next weekend still on? Got the new lures ready?" Liam smiled, a genuine, uncomplicated smile. He texted back, "Hell yeah, bring the good cooler." He took another sip of his beer, the cool liquid sharp and clean. He thought briefly of his family, picturing them navigating their new reality without his safety net. He felt a flicker of sadness, yes, but no regret. He had drawn a line in the sand, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. He had finally chosen himself. The future relationship with his family remained an unknown, unwritten chapter. But tonight, sitting alone on his stoop, watching the stars begin to prick the darkening sky, Liam O'Connell felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. He felt free.